know when I walked in City Hall this afternoon, they looked at me and said, "Oh, you're gonna have to stay on task today."
Yeah. Exactly.
Now it's gonna.
Yeah. Is it not muted yet? Right.
Time, those boys were really young pharmacists.
Good. And it's got the big deal.
It is a real big
Independent
deal.
pharmacy opening up in town.
Family operated too. I mean, super good. Yeah. It's amazing.
All right. Microphone's turned on. Oh, there it is. I have to push the button. All right, let's call this meeting to order and welcome everybody to our study session. For the record, all members of council are here with the exception of Councilor Vasquez, who has called and asked for an excused absence. If there's no objection, then she has an excused absence. Excellent. And staff is all present and accounted for as well. Thank you all for being here. So we've got a lot to talk about. We've got less than an hour to get it done, so let's get right to task. First item on the agenda is our 36th annual Cinco de Mayo Festival Proclamation. Approve a resolution proclaiming May 3 through 5, 2024 as the 36th annual Cinco de Mayo Festival in Sunnyside, Washington. Comments on this item?
No, nope, not for me.
Very good. I've been doing this now for 30 odd years, 36, I believe.
36 it says, yeah.
And we were the first, we were the biggest, and I think we continue that reputation, that status. So I'm in favor of the proclamation.
Okay, well, it is ready to read. So as soon as we approve that resolution, it'll be presented. We will have a question. I was talking to Chief about it a minute ago. We have a whole list of other proclamations that can be done for the month of May. And since we're not going to have time in this meeting to get through all of that and have that discussion, what we talked about doing is have the clerk send out the list, and we can vote on the list of proclamations that we'd like to do via email. Just do not respond to all, respond back to the clerk and she can give us the results.
Good idea.
Okay. Is there any objection to that idea? All right, look forward to that in the next few days then, that'll come down the pike and we can vote on that. And that way she doesn't have to show up at one of our meetings with a whole stack of resolutions that we may or may not approve. That's a fair amount of work. All right, next item, citywide pedestrian improvements, HLA task order 2024-06. Approve a resolution authorizing the interim city manager to execute task order 2024-06 with HLA Engineering and Land Surveying Incorporated for the TIB Complete Streets Award citywide pedestrian improvements projects. Mr. City Manager.
I'll turn this over to Mr. Sanchez.
Mr. Sanchez.
Thank you. Yes, at our previous council meeting, there was some question from council on how we came to the locations for the project. During that, we'd agreed to bring HLA to help explain some of these questions. So I have Stephanie Ray here with HLA that will go over it and then answer any questions that you may have.
Super.
All right, Ms. Ray.
Members of council, city manager, public works director, thank you for having me here tonight.
Following the last council meeting, we supplemented some information to council about the locations, why they were selected. This particular round for complete streets, to be competitive, we were focusing on those areas that would target a large amount of pedestrians, which is really your schools and your downtown areas. Your downtown is establishing with projects. However, your schools need more spot improvements that likely wouldn't be the result of a massive transportation effort. So there was a map that was provided. The original application was around 18 or so intersections with 100 ADA ramps. With the reduced award from TIB, we had to kind of scale that back. So we looked at prioritizing then those intersections to focusing on those that were the absolute worst priority. Some of these you'll know if you can drive by them, they are crosswalks with absolutely no ADA ramps. And it can be a little confusing looking at geometry, but we are really targeting those ADA ramps that if you were in a wheelchair, a walker, or some other motorized device to get around, several of these ramps will shoot you right into the intersection, which puts you in a travel way. And that is a more severe non-compliance than some of the other improvements. So in the map that we provided, there was a ranking priority. With the reduced amount, we are able to get done all of those highest ranking areas that were in the original application, along with the medium priorities. So lack of time. I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
Questions for Ms. Ray? Mr. Kavan.
Not a question, but I know that I think it was you that sent over that email, right? And they had the way that the ramps are gonna look after the project. Maybe in the future that might help, just a little bit to visualize what they're gonna look like and what changes, they're gonna go through.
Yep, of course.
Sorry.
One of the things when I was looking at the priority of these particularly down 16th between Edison and Lincoln, is that is I'm just at kind of a casual estimate of 6,000 people, traveling there, and the safety issues that, like you just mentioned, seem to me to be top priority for me. My daughter was a crossing guard at one of the schools, and keeping the kids where they were supposed to be was difficult, but having those extra safety factors there is really, really incredible, really important, I think. Thank you for going ahead and sending us back and reminding us of all the strings that are attached and how we might, if we wanted to do it later, we might not miss the boat completely. So thank you for explaining that.
Of course.
Further questions, comments?
Yeah, thanks for, I want to also say thank you for the work you've done on this. I know you've walked every one of these yourself.
We did.
And have been for a while, but it also gives us a future plan on what projects to take on.
Yeah.
So we really appreciate that.
And I'll supplement that. Thank you, Mr. Bueller, for that comment. The city has completed that first phase of an ADA transition plan, which is the self-evaluation phase. Our company personally has walked and evaluated every mile and every ADA ramp within the city. That plan has been submitted to city staff for review. Generally, what we've found is less than 10% of the routes within the city are not or are ADA compliant. So 90% are not. There's over 1,000 ramps. There's 157 miles of sidewalk. It was a huge effort by the city, but the purpose of this is to try to prioritize those improvements. So when these funding opportunities become available, that you're ready, you have an implementation plan and know which ones you're going to submit for.
Further comments?
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Ms. Ray. And I do also want to echo what my colleagues have said. I appreciate the extra information that you sent out. That certainly clarified a lot of the questions that we had at our previous meeting. And knowing that you guys have, like Mr. Bueller said, walked every single one of those intersections. You've really put the effort in, you put the time in, and I appreciate that. So thank you for all of that.
Thank you.
All right, next item would be the Ecology Stormwater Agreement. Approve a resolution authorizing the interim city manager to execute the Ecology Stormwater Agreement WQC-2024- Sunnyside -00202. Mr. City Manager.
Turn this over to, turn that over to Mr. Sanchez as well.
Mr. Sanchez.
Thank you. Okay, so This one here, the city of Sunnyside applied for a grant funding to facilitate a stormwater planning document to target stormwater outfalls with the goal of determining appropriate water quality measures and or eliminating the outfall in its entirety. So this is an ongoing thing, and Stephanie Ray, also with HLA here, will explain about this the program that we've been working on.
Ms. Ray.
Members of council, Public Works Director, thank you again for having me tonight. So we had submitted an application to Department of Ecology around October of last year. And Department of Ecology is one of the few funding programs that have a water quality program, which is where the WQC comes from. So Sunnyside also falls or is required to have their own MS4 permit, which means that the city has to monitor compliance with water quality. And that also means in any discharge, so any rainwater that goes into a catch basin that goes into something called the water body of the state, which means any SVID canal has to be monitored. And ultimately the city has a responsibility for water quality. So the city has been very proactive, particularly Raw, over the last few years to put together a GIS database. Right now, we're suspecting there's around 90 outfalls that municipal stormwater goes into open canals untreated. So for ecology, that's a red flag for them. Obviously, they're targeting those pollutants that go into those outfalls. So ecology is offering funding, which we applied for, to prepare a stormwater planning document. And in that document, the intent is to identify each one of those outfalls and prepare an implementation plan on how to either treat the stormwater or completely remove it by purposes of infiltration. So through this planning study, the intent then is it will be a document approved by the Department of Ecology that will allow the city to apply for additional funding for both design and construction to try to eliminate these outfalls.
Awesome.
Questions or comments? Come on.
Is this 100% a grant or part of it a loan?
So, great question. When we presented this last October, we presented this as a 25% match, 75% grant. The city is eligible for hardship, which reduces the match requirement from 25 to 15. But it gets better in that ecology has a little bit of a surplus of money. So they actually offered the city only a 5% cash match. So the actual, how do you want to say that? The contribution from the city would only be the $13,600. The rest is a grant.
Thank you.
Very nice. Ms. Hart, you had a question?
Oh, no, I had a hallelujah. That is an awesome situation. That the hardship is because there's so many spots, or what is that about?
The hardship is generally based on the city's low to moderate income. So more of the hardship of the community and the income levels.
Okay, thank you. But good job on that.
Ms. Ralston?
Yeah, out of these funds, what's the portion that is paid out to HLA for overseeing the grant and offering technical assistance for this?
So the initial, this particular grant is for a planning study. So the 272 that's in the grant agreement is actually the cost of doing the planning study. And so in there, you'll have the actual ecology agreement, and everything within that agreement is what we're delivering. So we are doing topographic survey, we're doing the planning, we're doing stormwater analysis, the calculations, the cost estimating, and then all the interface with Department of Ecology.
Okay.
Further questions or comments? Ms. Horner?
I just wanted to mention that this project is budgeted already. I know on the cover sheet, he did have the amount listed and there was a zero in the budgeted, but we did budget for this project, so it is there.
Cool. All right. Well, as I read this document the other night and I looked at the street that runs down the hill past my house, I'm thinking of the goal of zero output. I'm thinking that would be really entertaining to watch as that water runs down the hill and hits the bottom there on Crescent and launches toward the canal. I'm not sure what we're going to do to try to catch that, but a goal of zero would be phenomenal if we could actually achieve that. And I think there'll be parts of town that we can do that. We can definitely improve the situation. and do what we can to ensure that the water that does go into wasteways or spillways or whatever is clean, treated. It's not bringing a whole lot of engine oils and antifreezes and other contaminants with it. But yeah, I did kind of have to laugh as I looked out my window and surveyed that street. Thought, yeah, boy, I don't know. Zero's a big goal.
That's a big goal.
So, all right. Further comments or questions on this item? Right, item D, then Ecology Stormwater Agreement, HLA Task Order 2024-05, approve a resolution authorizing the interim city manager to execute Task Order 2024-05 with HLA Engineering and Land Surveying Incorporated to complete the tasks identified in the Ecology Stormwater Agreement WQC-2024-Sunny-00202. Mr. City Manager.
Mr. Sanchez and Ms. Ray.
All right.
So yes, so this is the task order that Stephanie can talk about if you have any questions, but it's basically what we just talked about.
City Council, Public Works Director. So to answer Councilmember Frosto's question, the task order for us to complete all the deliverable items in the ecology agreement is under this item. The amount of 272,000, of which 5% would be that 13,060.
Could you repeat that number, please?
Of course.
I read it earlier, but if you wouldn't mind, please.
Of course. I'm flipping through pages. It's 13,600, excuse me.
For the city's portion, yeah.
Good, thank you. All right,
Okay, so item C was basically the authorize the agreement to make them do the study, and item D is to put it to work. It's two separate resolutions, but it's one's to get the job done.
A quick question.
Go ahead, Mr. Gilman.
So none of this work is gonna be done until we get the grant, right? We were approved for the grant?
We submitted for the grant last October, and it actually took ecology from last October to now to release the grant agreement to you. That has already come to the city and it's ready for Mr. Lehman's signature through DocuSign. So as soon as that's signed, then we move forward. Our hope, and granted, there's a big hope there, but our hope is that we are able to move forward through this plan rather quickly in time for the next application cycle, which is this year around October, for an actual implementation project.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? Okay, moving on. Item E, Surface Transportation Block Grant, or STBG application. Approve a resolution authorizing the submission of a grant application to the Surface Transportation Block Grant Program to the Yakima Valley Conference of Governments. Mr. City Manager.
Mr. Sanchez.
Mr. Sanchez.
Thank you. And again, I have Stephanie Ray here with HLA Engineering to go over this project.
Ms. Ray.
Members of council, Public Works Director, thank you again. So many of you may have received some information from Yakima Valley Conference of Governments, also known as YVCOG, about an upcoming opportunity. STBG, acronym is Surface Transportation Block Grant. The city is familiar with this program. Past projects for the city have been the Downtown 6th Street project, which was just recently done. The acronym changed, so don't let that fool you. It used to be called Surface Transportation Program, and now it's STBG. So what this funding program does is it's geared toward transportation projects only, and transportation projects that are on federally classified routes. So the project that you have in your packet, this was actually coordinated last year through something called a city safety program. The city actually did a city safety program, which identified those intersections throughout the city where there has been a serious or a fatal accident, whether pedestrian or vehicle crash. There were 3 intersections identified that had serious or fatal car accidents. One is this one, which is Yakima Valley Highway and 1st Street. The second one was Maple Grove and Yakima Valley Highway. And the third one was Lincoln and Yakima Valley Highway there at Walmart. And this particular project was identified as a priority through previous council, previous city management, but also has been on your 6-year tip for a number of years. And if council can kind of visualize that intersection, or you can look at the map, it is really the start of your downtown area coming into Yakima Valley Highway, as a lead in into your 6th Street. The intersection is rather interesting. It was an old state highway, so it has a huge super elevation on it. And why this one has an elevated priority is because if you were standing on the low side of that intersection, you can't actually physically see across because of that crown in the road. And then consequently, when you're sitting there, your signal heads are actually not aligned with your lane lines, which is a significant problem. And so what this project is intending to do is we're trying to go for a net zero, meaning 0 accidents, which is a WashDOT initiative. So that super elevation would be taken out. Quite a lot of elevation difference needs to be taken out of there for one thing. But also the ideal improvement is a roundabout. And that roundabout was coordinated with WashDOT staff that would be the appropriate metrics at that location. We also want to make sure we have continuation of the Yakima Valley pathway to come through there. Currently, it stops about 16th. And the idea is to connect that through the city of Sunnyside and then up to the neighboring cities. So this application is going to Yakima Valley Conference of Governments for consideration amongst all the other cities within Yakima County for funding. There is currently a 0% match on this program if the improvements are obligated by 2026. So meaning that if obligation, which is kind of money getting into the city's bank account, if that happens after 2027, then there's a 13.5% match. But the city should know is at that point, YVCOG will do another call for projects. So our estimated timeframe on this, if awarded funding, would be obligation through 2026.
Okay, questions or comments?
I have a question here.
Go ahead, Ms. Hart.
I noticed with this particular application, there is a deadline of the 26th, which is what day? Friday. And so we need to have, in order to not lose any time getting this started, the whole process, we need to be cognizant of the idea there's a deadline Friday. It's big bold letters back here and highlighted, so I wouldn't miss that. But yes, that's, and what you're talking about there too, I was noticing the other night, I wanted to go to Bob's drive in there and I realized that, yeah, when you're there, the other guys are like way up high and you're down here in a dip. And I had never really paid attention to that before, but it is dangerous there. I like that. I like the roundabout there.
Further questions or comments?
I have a question.
Mr. Beeler.
The elevation between YVH going down Schoon Road all the way to First Ave or Outlook Road, it goes back up again. Is that all going to stay there, or will that be a part of bringing everything to one level?
It would be part of bringing everything to one level. If you guys are able to switch over to the site plan, what we have shown in kind of that grayish, what we call a hatch, that would be the actual level of improvement. So we're going to be going back quite a ways. And we need to do that for a couple of reasons, because of what you said with elevation difference. But we also have to put in a storm drainage system. So we need to make sure everything's draining to a correct location so we can dispose of the stormwater. Roundabouts also require something called a chicane. And a chicane is a traffic calming movement where you actually kind of move that travel lane just a little bit and actually make people turn a corner. That way they don't fly right through it.
Further questions or comments? Deputy Mayor.
Just something real quick on page 94. I think it's just an error where it says the 3 public hearings. One of them says July 15 of this year. I think it was last year, right?
That would
So
be
there's
correct.
no public hearing going forward. They're all done.
This project's been on the last 3, and you're correct about the date. This would be a project, though, that we would anticipate having in the current 6-year tip, which that public hearing would be coming up around the same time. But yeah, you are correct. It was in there.
Okay, so that one should be last year. Okay.
I got a question for Paul. Exactly where does the bike lane start on YVH? Is it close to this? Will it be involved in this?
Where the bike lane is now,
Yes. Where does it start on YVH?
right there on First.
on First.
And then it heads east all the way through to 16th.
I've never seen a bike lane incorporated with a roundabout. How does that work?
So great question. What we are looking to do is, you can do a bike lane as part of a shared use pathway. So ultimately, a corridor study needs to be done on Yakima Valley Highway to know if you need 3 lanes, 2 lanes, 4 lanes, what does that look like? But we would like to pull the bike lanes out of the roadway ultimately to try to put a buffer in between motorized vehicles and bikes. And one way to do that is a 10-foot shared use pathway. So that pathway, similar to Yakima Valley Highway between 16th down to Lincoln, you have an offset pathway. So we would do something similar and bring that to the roundabout.
It'll look nice.
That would be the ideal. We do have certain right-of-way questions in there because I don't think we have any more right-of-way in that area than what we're already using. Is that correct?
In that stretch is about 100-foot right away between First and 16th.
Mhm.
But yeah, after that, yeah,
Things get a little tight.
Yeah, the way the layout is different. Yeah.
Ms. Rosto.
Question.
Mhm.
So I asked the question last time a couple weeks ago about this is a $2 million project, and just I guess I just try to understand the process around transportation improvement and transportation projects. How do we assess that we need a roundabout? Given so much other improvements around transportation that need to be done, or roads that need to be paved, potholes, et cetera, et cetera. How do we come down to we need a roundabout? And then is there data that actually proves that roundabouts decrease vehicle accidents in any given area?
So good question, multifaceted question. And please correct me if I don't answer it correctly or completely. So the first part of the question was about how do we determine that a roundabout is needed when there's so many other improvements needed around the city, potholing. And so the potholing would fall under like a maintenance type that would generally fall within city staffing ability. Then we have the next level up is like a grind and overlay, which we're currently doing, looking to start here on Yakima Valley Highway. Grind and overlays are also called arterial preservation projects. Their funding is generally 0 to about 750,000, depending on which funding program you're going for. Then you get into the next level, which is a complete reconstruction project. So this particular funding program is for what we're looking to compete for is a complete reconstruction project instead of just a kind of a Band-Aid, I guess you would, but which would be an APP project. So in this case, we actually do need to change that geometry. So we know the current 4-way intersection, because of that super elevation, doesn't work. So we need to tear it out. Then we look at, okay, if you have an existing signal, what is involved in that? And in this case, the signal and the mast arms aren't appropriate for your lane locations. So in order to get them lined up, we need to move those heads out, which means we need to put a new mast arm on because we're already at the end, which means we have to go back and look at the pole. So because we're doing that level of improvement right now, then we think, well, okay, what's the cost advantages for the city in terms of long-term maintenance and construction costs between just a signalized intersection and then also a roundabout? And exactly what your question was, is there any studies to show that a roundabout is more appropriate? And there are. Most cities and even ourselves have been very reluctant to put in roundabouts. Please note that Grandview just completed one that are right off the interstate at Blisle. Granger is putting one in right off of their main access into the city. And so what roundabouts do over signals is keep traffic moving. And that falls into something called a level of service for that intersection. So what we want to do is keep this at a level of service of an A or a B or a C, something high, where that affords people the ability to move through that intersection relatively unrestricted. A signal, we don't necessarily have that capability. Then we look at maintenance of a signal, and WashDOT used to maintain all the signals throughout the city. WashDOT stopped doing that. That forced the city to contract out with Northwest Systems. And so the city actually pays an outside company to maintain the signals. And so when you look at that over the lifespan of this, it could be 40, 50, 60 years before another improvement happens here. What is that maintenance cost over that duration compared to that with a roundabout? So quite a lot of analysis goes into this for us to determine what type of improvement would be best. And then we also look at safety is number one, with bike lanes and pedestrians, and how do we get multimodal across either a signal or a roundabout, and which one's going to be a safer bet for the community. So in this case, the roundabout was selected as that number one priority.
And I do want to add to that. 20 years ago, I moved back to the United States from Latin America, and I lived both in San Jose, Costa Rica, and Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic over those years that I was out of the country. And in both of those cities, they utilized roundabouts a great deal. And they moved a tremendous amount of traffic through those roundabouts. I think in Costa Rica and San Jose, the one closest to where I lived was a 5-lane roundabout. And they managed to get traffic on peripheral streets around the city through those roundabouts regularly. These were roundabouts that even had stoplights on them in order to regulate who was going in at a given time. And I got used to using them, and I was kind of surprised and hadn't thought about how unprepared Americans were for roundabouts. When they put the 3 in on Valley Mall Boulevard and Union Gap, boy, that has made the situation over there so much better. I drive through there several times a week, and it is so much nicer once you get used to it and understand who has the right of way and who has to stop and wait. It really goes smoothly. And as she mentioned, the safety, I have seen so many accidents on this intersection of First and Yakima Valley Highway through the years. I used to come into town on Schoon Road, and I saw accidents happening right in front of me. And so we want to prevent accidents, especially prevent fatalities, but we want to prevent accidents. We don't want people to get hurt. And so this has proven to be a good way to do that. And once you get used to the roundabouts, they're not bad. It's just the getting used to them. That takes a little bit of time. So, Ms. Hart.
One thing I was just thinking about too, because that's part as you're coming around off of YVH and you're coming down on First for the truck route, that should make things quite a bit easier for the big trucks, the freight trucks, to get off of the YVH and down to the truck route. Because
correct. Thank you both, Mayor and Councilmember Hart, for your comments. Roundabouts work only if they're sized appropriately. There's nothing worse than going through a roundabout that's too small, then nobody can make it. So in this case, what you see on the screen in the center, you see 2 circles there. That inner circle would be like a landscaping median that the city could have a sign or flag of, some landscaping feature. That next circle out is showing you where the truck apron is. So it would be a mountable, drivable ramp. And Mayor, you had a great question before about right-of-way. And yes, this project does need a little bit of right-of-way, both from the dentist's office and then also that property on the corner in order to make this improvement work. And so in the application, we identified it's a phase called RW, which means right-of-way.
Speaking of the dentists, I see they're blocked off their west park or east parking, the entrance.
Oh, good question.
So, yeah, great question. We're going to be just outside of their parking, though their entry going into the dentist's office is going to be a little interesting. They're pretty close to the intersection. And what we're looking to do is, it doesn't quite depict it well. You can't see where the difference is between existing asphalt and new asphalt. But the road is actually tapered a little bit to the south of what they currently have. So that allows us to do a little bit of a longer drive in to the parking lot, giving them a little bit more flexibility.
But a person leaving can only go right, it looks like.
So at the moment, we're still working on that, but we're looking to have them have a 2-way.
And the person coming in from YVH can't take a left into that east parking lot.
We're working to have them both come in and out. So.
The driving into the parking lot isn't as big of a problem, because if you're coming from the west, you can just loop around the roundabout, spit back out the other side and you're in.
The last thing for Mr. Sanchez, are we looking at upgrading water supply for Schoon Road? I know that's been on the books for a long time.
Not at the moment. There is a project that down the road might require some of that, but right now on Schoon Road, we don't have any water project extending it.
Right.
No.
Don't making it bigger,
Oh, upsizing the line.
right? The main
Yeah.
line that goes underneath Schoon Road.
Right. No, we don't have a project right now.
Okay, further questions or comments on this item?
Just something real quick.
Mr. Deputy Mayor.
On the summary, it says the city safety plan is, where can I find that safety plan? Somebody could email it to me.
We can do that. The city completed it in around 2021 as part of a WashDOT grant.
Mhm.
And it's just based on the last 6 years of accident data. And from there, we prepared an application to WashDOT for the city safety program. And so I will send you both, as a whole, I'll send you the city safety plan and the application that was done.
Thank you.
Thank
Awesome.
you. Yeah. How often do we review and reassess like those plans? 2021 you mentioned? What was the last time?
So the plans are good for 3 years. Between this year and next year, we would want to reassess that. And mainly the information that gets collected is reliant on the last 6 years of crash data. And that's the data actually reported to Washington State Patrol. So it doesn't include the fender benders and all the other incidences which aren't reported, but it targets the plan.
Thank you.
Further questions or comments? Awesome. Thank you so much. I know you've been standing for a long time, and I think the next one we may be able to let you sit down for a couple minutes. All right, next item is community concert series. Authorize the interim city manager to start a community concert series with a budget amendment of $10,000. Mr. City Manager.
So this is something I was in about 10 years ago, I was in a trial in Yakima on something that they had up there. I talked to Trevor about it and something that he was excited about, and I think he'd probably thought about a few times. So what we're looking at doing is maybe on Wednesdays at Centennial Square from 11:30 to 1:30 have different bands come in. It would start probably the last 2 Wednesdays in May and then run June, July, August until the kids go back to school. But people would be able to take their lunch down there, eat, watch a concert. Some of the groups that do this in Yakima, Trevor's reached out to him, and then he's gotten contact with some bands that are interested in coming down here. The average price is about $500 a band. To do this would require a budget amendment and about $10,000 to book all of the bands throughout the summer.
Questions for the manager, Mr. Beeler?
We've had music in the park before and it's built up the park, and I've gone quite a few times, and I think this is something we need to start up again.
Thank you.
I think this sounds great.
Okay,
Me too.
Ms. Hart?
I'm really excited about it because I like it that you're doing it during the middle of the day when people could go down and sit there in that little park or at any of those little picnic tables that are kind of just situated in that intersection. I think it's really kind of another way to bring people downtown. And I know that before when we had the concerts down there in the park, people, they really looked forward to it. I can't remember, was there food there? Or was it just the music? Do you remember?
Music.
It was just the music.
What
yeah.
year?
I don't know, honey. It's been a while. ago.
Before COVID, I believe.
Before COVID. There you go. Everything's pre-COVID.
This is different than what was associated with the farmer's market and
Yeah,
all of that
yeah.
stuff. And we had the concerts there as well, but this is
This is
different
different
than that.
yeah.
Mhm.
And so were those other concerts was a little bit, because they were in the evening, I believe.
That was all in the evening, yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Rosta?
Yeah, and it's not much of a pushback, but just a consideration, because we were having a meeting with Mr. Martin and Counselor Hart and Counselor Vasquez just last week, I think, and we were talking about the problem of parking downtown. So, Counselor Beeler just mentioned how, having these downtown will fill, up the Centennial Square, which is amazing. I'm all about community engagement and bringing people out. But I think it's also something that we should have in the forefront of how, for getting an influx of people out. And we're already having a problem with parking. How are we going to simultaneously handle the two?
what the park is right across the street and it's never full. So I think there's a ton of extra parking at Central Park. We have about a block and a half away. I mean, it's a little bit of a walk, but there's 2 city-owned parking lots that don't get used really at all. Trevor can probably speak to it.
So last week, because we had some conversations about this last week, so I went 1,000 feet radius from the center of Sixth and Edison. There's over 700 public spaces and over 400 private spaces within 1,000 feet of that intersection. So, I think that businesses might want you to walk in front of their business. Maybe you stop in front of Juice May and buy a drink or something like that. I think that's definitely like a good thing. But there seems, from what I've seen, to be some adequate parking within 1,000 feet of this area.
And I think we had talked about this before. I know our former manager and I had talked about this a little bit, and she'd done an evaluation that says, yeah, if you want to get a parking spot directly in front of the venue, you're going to struggle. But if you're willing to walk a couple blocks, then there's usually plenty of open places. And as Chief said, the park is rarely full. That parking lot there to the east side of the park is usually got something open there. So
My vision for this, I guess, would be that maybe staff from the hospital, staff from City Hall walk down there with their lunch, enjoy the music during their lunch hour and walk back to work. And so that hopefully they wouldn't be taking a ton of parking spaces. Now you might get some school staff or something that's working and the kids are gone and they drive down there for their lunch break, but
So there's only one thing I don't like about this project, and that's the time of day, because that means I probably won't get to go because my Wednesdays are fairly committed during that time of day. I enjoy these kinds of things. And so when they're in the evening, I really like to be there. But that also doesn't stop us from doing something like what the Farmers Market Group was doing with bringing in music for a Friday evening as well. So I think it's a great way to break up the day. It's a great way to get people out and do something a little bit different, bring people together. And that kind of stuff is always fun. I'm in favor of this.
Me too. I was just gonna say, there's a new restaurants opening up down there. So if you didn't, and there's several right at the corner there, off of Fifth Street, there's a couple of restaurants there. And so there's food available, which is always a big concern to me. I like to know where the food's at. And but I think that people who walk down, we can consider it part of our health plan, city-wise, in the hospital too. And I definitely could do with some more walking, I'm pretty sure. But I think that also, it's kind of I love it. It's almost, you could almost consider that a mental health break, for people who work in offices. Cool. I like it.
All right. Further comments on this item? Hearing none. Item G. Unfreeze positions, recreation coordinator and technology support assistant. Approve a resolution to end the temporary freeze on the hiring of the positions of recreation coordinator and technology support assistant. Mr. City Manager.
Ms. Navarro.
Good evening, City Council. What I have before you tonight is a resolution to unfreeze the positions that were frozen on February 12th. So since that date, there's been some conversation around those positions, and from the feedback I received is you guys wanted more information in regards to both of those positions, what they would do, how they would help the department, and how they would also help us in the services we provide to our community. And so that's what I've provided to you tonight. Behind your agenda cover sheet, you have the resolution to unfreeze the positions, as well as some documents that kind of tell you what this position, why this position is needed, what will it do, and how the addition of this position will improve the department and the services we provide. As well as those items, I've provided the job descriptions for those positions for you to review as well, and the org chart of each of those departments, just so you can see exactly where those positions will fit in within their respective departments. And so if you have any questions upon any of the information I've presented to you tonight, I'm happy to answer it.
Questions or comments? Sorry.
I'm just curious, when I was looking through the job description, and the other thing I was looking for was something about what the base scale would be. Is it going to be the salary based on experience?
Both positions are, those rates were approved with the 2024 budget. So those are in there. That's why I didn't include them but yes, they will be based on experience and education levels that each of those positions bring to that position when they're filled.
They are both unionized positions, so we've proposed union salary schedules within our current union contracts to accommodate those.
I believe I saw that in there, so I just was curious about that. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Mr. Beeler?
Just a guess on if it's unfrozen, how long it would take to actually fill the position, knowing that we've had a hard time doing in the past.
If once they become unfrozen, the job announcements and will be posted to the website within 2 to 3 days. My norm for positions is I've been leaving them open for 2 to 4 weeks, just depending on the feedback and responses we get from interested individuals. So 4 weeks, if we need to extend it an additional 2 weeks, that's kind of how I just play it by ear to see how the response has been to the posting. And then once we close it, I would say within 2 weeks, we rank them and schedule them for interviews. So the process usually takes, after it closes, I would say about a month, give or take, to get someone in. We like to give individuals the opportunity to obviously give their 2-week notice to their current employer if they are currently employed, and do things the most correct way.
And we're still under budget because we budgeted a full-time
Correct.
for the 2 positions.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Very good.
Other questions? Mr. Deputy Mayor?
So when I proposed to freeze these positions, with the Parks and Recs, especially, I kept hearing that the Parks and Recs was going to be open later with that 3rd position. And I kept hearing ever since then. I just don't see it here in writing. Is that still the plan?
The hours for city buildings are set by council. And so right now, the intent is to provide longer time, but until we actually get somebody hired and we look and see what programs she wants to put in place, you guys have to set those council hours. It's in the municipal code right now, or the community center hours. So right now it's set from, I believe, 10 to 4. So once we get somebody in there and we figure out what she wants to accommodate, we would have to come to council and have you guys approve the change in regular hours for that. So there's nothing in particular here because we don't have that.
Do we know what she has in plans to kind of program to with this extra position?
Well, I know the intent was to have an after-school drop-in program that would be open. I believe what she said was until 6 p.m., but I don't want to quote her off the top of my head. Do you know if 6 was correct? Yeah, to begin with, and then whatever else she has going on, so.
Ms. Hart?
It seems to me too that there's other programs that are going on out there too that probably need to have somebody at the community center. With the T-ball going on out there and all those different sports happening out in the field. Just having an extra person there and having that drop-in situation, that I know that a lot of times in previous years, when we had a full, we're still building our Parks and Rec programs. And so it's sort of hard to guess how long she's going to be out there. But it seems to me that once we get it up and really robust, I think that those hours probably will change a little bit for that one person. I mean, whoever that person is, it could be that everybody else is working till 4. Maybe that person's working until 6 or maybe 7. It really depends, doesn't it? That's my question, I guess.
Ms. Prowse, did I see your hand up a minute ago?
Yeah, I'm just kind of collecting my thoughts. So given that there's now 2 unionized positions, so it would be Mary's is unionized, right? The director, I'm sorry.
The recreation supervisor is in the supervisors union.
Supervisor union, okay. And then this position would also be unionized.
This position would fall, I believe, into the public works union.
Okay.
And then the clerical person is actually in the clerical union. So there would all 3 be in separate unions based on the nature of the work.
Okay, so then does that mean that we would have to go back to negotiations depending on when we set the time for the new hours for the community center? I'm
No.
just thinking how would this work, given that they are union, and if their hours are to shift like the supervisor and.
That's one of the reasons we have that position in the recreation coordinator position within the public works union contract versus the clerical contract is Public Works has more varied hours as far as work being based on the need. And so the general need of a recreation coordinator could be scheduled on weekends or late nights. It's not really restricted to those normal business hours. And that contract already accommodates for us to schedule staff in accordance with the needs of the city. So
Oh.
those wouldn't need to go before
Good.
the union.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Good.
So it's already in the contract then, if we were to.
For the public
The
works.
Public Works contract in general,
Okay.
yes.
So in this being a new position too, we would, in the contract, we would probably put in the hours that this position would work
Mhm.
and what our expectations are for the position. If that answered your question.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And
Okay.
I have a follow-up question, Mr. Sanchez. Maybe you would be able to kind of explain to me how this works. We're all under the understanding that we have to develop a plan for ARPA funds. And I think the last time that we were in workshop, I had asked a question, do we have a breakdown on how ARPA funds are going to be used specifically for youth programming or Parks and Recs? And I think the question was, we were unsure and unclear. So here we are, we're trying to build out this position and delegate to this position. And then we also have a whole bunch of other, we have this pot of money where we have to figure out exactly where it's gonna go. Are you already in conversations with the current supervisor of Parks and Recs around how that's gonna work in the short time frame that we have?
So yes, one of that was that we could have a lot of programs, but we need storage. So that was, I think, what led to that too, is that we also needed storage because there's a lot of ideas, but a lot of that requires storage for some of the equipment. Storage has been an issue for a while. So she has been purchasing things for some of this recreation stuff, but it's going to require the storage. And that was how it led to create putting ARPA money into storage for the community center.
I don't want to just hog the microphone. Is anybody else?
Nobody's jumping for their microphone right now. Go ahead, Ms. Hart.
Well, I think, if I get it right, the ARPA money is a whole separate project. I mean, that, with your storage, and that's what we were doing with that. The money for the extra person at the Parks and Rec has already been budgeted in our 2024 budget. Is that not correct?
Well, we have committed, so of the remaining ARPA funds that we had dedicated to youth programs, there was about $175,000 when we had this conversation at that previous. We committed 50,000 of that to the summer camp. Plus she had about approximately $60,000 in equipment that was on order. And then with the addition of the storage building that Raul was talking about, I believe that pretty much summed up what that $175,000, the plan for that $175,000 was.
Then we talked about boarding up the inside of the gym.
Oh yeah, that was the other one.
Portion to
Some
because
remodeling
of
going
indoor
on.
soccer for some of the little kids. Yeah.
Mr. Beeler.
Technology support agents, how many tickets are you guys still behind on?
Right now, I think we're sitting at about 45.
45. So we really need this position.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Further questions or comments? Sorry.
Just a comment. I really appreciate the fact that you put in there, why is this position needed, in your explanation of what we're going after, and also the fact that you put in the job description. So as council members, we can kind of see where how that person's day is going to look like. And I think with the particularly with the technology specialist or support person, that one was really very, I liked how that was all laid out. It was very nice, as well as the park person as well. So thank you for the extra work on that. Really appreciate it.
Ms. Prowse.
Final question.
Okay.
Is there a reason why the Parks and Rec supervisor isn't present at council meetings? Has this been done before? I know that we have Mr. Knight here, and thank you so much for being super responsive along the way. And and just really getting us into the ins and outs of your work. But is this something that has been done before? Is there something that we can do in the future to see how Parks and Recs kind of moves along and all of the updates that are up and coming?
Well, I mean, if you think there's a need, yeah, but I don't think in the past it's ever, I mean, maybe at one time there was a director, a Parks and Rec director that might have been in here. I wasn't here at the time,
Okay.
but as a supervisor, I don't see, I don't think she would
This
be here.
person's at the same level as your division supervisors for water, sewer, streets. So that's typically they're not
They don't usually.
at that
come.
level.
Yeah,
We've tried to keep the department heads here so that they can help us be informed on the entire sector that they're responsible for, but the supervisors, we don't ask them to. We have not historically asked them to be here. There may be a time where, for example, requests that she be present for a meeting to answer questions, and that's completely on him. But as council, we don't try not to go that deep into staff.
Just one more thing.
Mr. Gavon.
Ms. Horner, I know you said that it would take the change of the municipal code. Are we already working on something to edit or change that to help reflect the hours on the?
We haven't been working on it because at this point, we haven't had the staff to do so. So if council chooses not to unfreeze the position, then there's no need to do that work. So we're kind of in a holding pattern. But then the conversations will happen around I'm not sure if that would go to the Parks and Recreation Board for discussion as well. Probably that would be between Raul and Mary to figure out.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Council, we're kind of out of time for the rest of this study session agenda. We'll have to tackle that during the regular meeting. We have a very packed agenda this evening, and Mr. Martin has requested the addition of one more item. So we're going to, if there's no objection, we're going to close this meeting and adjourn and take a bit of a break so that we can be ready to start our regular meeting at 6:30. No objection?
Objection.
All right, we are adjourned at 6:25.